A multitude of significant events are unfolding across the globe, and today, we delve into some crucial developments. Stay with us as we unpack these complex situations, and remember, we'll provide key takeaways at the end of this report. Secured entrances, border control stations, law enforcement officers equipped with deportation authority. No, this is not a scene from a foreign land. It represents the evolving reality of immigration enforcement in specific regions within the United States. Why are certain states taking more drastic measures than ever before to intensify enforcement against individuals lacking legal documentation? Is the primary driver security concerns, or is it political maneuvering? What occurs when educational institutions begin refusing entry to children, or when medical facilities demand proof of immigration status prior to offering treatment? Please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button. Your support is incredibly important for helping us grow and continue bringing you in-depth analysis like this. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. In the year 2025, the regulations are shifting rapidly. Certain states are not merely reinforcing existing laws, they are fundamentally rewriting them. From the Lone Star State to the Sunshine State, we examine the 10 U.S. states implementing the most stringent measures against unauthorized immigration. We encourage you to watch through to the end, as we will offer concluding thoughts on these developments. Number 10. Texas. A location where the boundary line transcends mere geography. It has become a zone of intense conflict. In 2025, Texas is capturing headlines for asserting state control over immigration law. The state legislature has enacted Senate Bill 4, a far-reaching initiative empowering local police to apprehend and potentially deport migrants suspected of entering the nation without authorization. You might be taken aback by the extent of this legislation. It criminalizes the mere presence within the state without proper documentation. Indeed, simply being there becomes a punishable offense. But the changes don't halt there. With an extensive border stretching over 1,200 miles adjacent to Mexico, Texas is also undertaking the construction of new segments of border barriers, funded entirely by state resources. Are we witnessing the emergence of a state-operated immigration enforcement body, one that could potentially rival federal agencies? The Lone Star State has transformed its borders into legal fault lines, creating significant tension. Could this serve as a blueprint for actions other states might consider in the future? Or is Texas charting its own distinct course? Regardless, the entire nation is observing these developments with keen interest. Number 9. Florida. In certain areas, lacking proof of citizenship might merely lead to complications. In this particular state, however, it possesses the potential to drastically alter an individual's life trajectory. Florida, operating under new statutes passed for 2025, has intensified its regulations in a manner that instills anxiety even among long-term residents. Medical centers now inquire about your immigration status before providing admission. Employers, they are mandated to utilize the E-Verify system or face the possibility of substantial financial penalties. And if you are without documentation and apprehended while driving, even possessing a license issued by another state renders it automatically void. But guess what? That isn't even the most startling aspect. Local law enforcement entities are now authorized to detain any individual they suspect of being in the country unlawfully. No federal agency involvement is required. Thousands have reportedly already departed, fearful of the consequences a single traffic stop might entail. Is this stringent enforcement, or is it the cultivation of fear? As these policies become more severe, many are questioning, is this the trajectory of immigration law throughout America, beginning here in Florida? Number 8. Oklahoma. No international border, no coastline, just expansive heartland highways, vast prairie skies, and immigration statutes that are causing widespread concern nationally. In 2025, this state shocked the nation by approving legislation that goes further than many states situated along the U.S.-Mexico border. Oklahoma has designated living within its boundaries without legal immigration status as a state crime. You would be astonished. Just existing in the state without the required papers could now result in incarceration for an individual. However, it becomes even more intense. Under House Bill 4156, Anyone lacking lawful presence who is arrested for any reason can face criminal charges based solely on their immigration status. Upon completing their sentence, they are mandated to depart the state within 72 hours. Refusal or failure to comply could lead to additional jail time. No federal agencies are needed. No immigration and customs enforcement involvement is necessary. This represents state-led enforcement in its most unadulterated form. If you assume this law is merely symbolic, reconsider. Local authorities are already formulating implementation strategies. County jails are modifying their procedures. Community organizations are expressing alarm, and even sheriffs concede this alters their entire policing methodology. Suddenly, a routine traffic stop could initiate deportation proceedings, all without involving Washington. But guess what? This isn't occurring without resistance. Legal challenges are already advancing. Civil rights groups contend it infringes upon federal authority. Oklahoma's counter-argument. They assert the state is merely safeguarding its inhabitants and addressing gaps where federal enforcement is perceived as inadequate. Why this state? Why at this moment? Many suggest it's driven by political momentum. Oklahoma is among several Republican-led states reshaping local immigration policy to mirror national discourse. Yet critics argue the human cost might be excessive. Escalating fear, divided families, and heightened friction between communities and law enforcement. Here's an unexpected element. Oklahoma's immigrant population is comparatively small, constituting less than 6% of the total populace. Despite this, the new law ranks among the most stringent in the nation. Could it establish a precedent for other states distant from the border? Or will legal opposition halt its progression? Either way, the events unfolding in Oklahoma are no longer a peripheral issue. They represent a significant new battlefront. Number 7. Tennessee. Imagine this. One instant, your child is preparing for their school day. The next, they are denied entry at the school gates. Not due to academic performance or conduct issues, but because they cannot furnish proof of legal U.S. residency. This is not a recounting from history. This is the reality in 2025, and it's unfolding in Tennessee. You would be stunned at the reach of the new legislation. Lawmakers recently sanctioned a bill permitting public schools to refuse enrollment to students unable to demonstrate lawful presence. In a nation where education was historically viewed as a fundamental right for every child, Tennessee is now challenging the boundaries of that principle. The repercussions? Immense. However, the situation extends further. School officials could potentially charge tuition to the children of undocumented parents. For numerous families, particularly those employed in low-wage occupations, this signifies that education is no longer an assured component of their child's future. The message conveyed is unambiguous. If you cannot legally prove your presence, do not anticipate receiving the same entitlements. You might inquire, how did this situation arise? It connects back to enduring discussions surrounding Plyler versus Doe, the 1982 Supreme Court ruling, which affirmed that states are obligated to educate all children, irrespective of their immigration status. Tennessee's recent law overtly contests this precedent. Although it hasn't proceeded unchallenged, civil rights advocates are actively opposing it. It signifies a profound alteration in how one state determines access to public education. What happens when fear prevents children from attending school, not because they lack the desire to learn, but because their families are apprehensive? What kind of future does this engender? Tennessee is grappling with these questions presently. Whatever transpires next, the effects will undoubtedly extend far beyond the state's borders. Tennessee has also broadened state-level enforcement collaborations with federal immigration bodies, accelerating deportation processes, and utilizing local jails to hold individuals for ICE collection. In counties such as Davidson and Rutherford, this cooperation has reportedly doubled within the past year. And here's something many overlook. Tennessee has experienced a swift surge in its immigrant population, especially in metropolitan centers like Nashville and Memphis. Yet rather than fostering integration, this legislation is injecting fear into classrooms and homes. Number 6. Georgia. Bustling airports, imposing cityscapes, flourishing industries. Beneath the surface of this economic activity, one southern state is intensifying its grip in ways that have captured nationwide attention. Georgia has implemented audacious, controversial measures in 2025 to enforce immigration laws with a severity that is unsettling communities and even creating divisions among local officials. You would be shocked at the depth of these laws. Under House Bill 87, a piece of legislation often compared to Arizona's notorious SB 1070, police possess the authority to investigate immigration status during routine stops. This implies that a single malfunctioning taillight could potentially lead to detention. For some inhabitants, everyday tasks now carry the associated fear of deportation. And it's not solely law enforcement. Employers face severe repercussions for employing undocumented workers, with state audits intensifying this year. E-Verify checks are compulsory for nearly all businesses employing 10 or more individuals. Penalties for non-compliance encompass the revocation of business licenses, effectively ceasing operations entirely. But guess what? This only reveals part of the story. Local detention centers are mandated to verify the immigration status of every individual processed. In counties like Gwinnett and Cobb, collaboration with federal agencies has escalated, leading to a significant rise in deportation figures. This is generating a chilling atmosphere, even affecting immigrants who possess legal status. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Georgia accommodates over 1 million immigrants, with upwards of 400,000 lacking documentation. In urban areas such as Atlanta, they constitute the vital workforce for sectors ranging from construction to hospitality. However, currently, many are reportedly relocating. Schools note diminishing attendance figures, and healthcare facilities have observed a reduction in immigrant patient visits. Why is this significant? Because fear is altering the way people live. It transcends mere legality. It pertains to fundamental daily survival. What occurs when individuals become too fearful to contact the police, report mistreatment, or even attend their jobs? Georgia is pushing the limits of state-level enforcement, and whether it serves as a national template or a cautionary narrative is yet to be determined. Number 5. Alabama. Consider a scenario where simply being observed in public could place you in jeopardy. In 2025, one state has integrated the concept of immigration enforcement into nearly every facet of daily existence. Alabama's HB 56 continues to generate significant repercussions years after its initial introduction. And now, it has been revitalized and strengthened with enhanced enforcement capabilities. Under these statutes, law enforcement officers are required to verify immigration status during any lawful stop, if there exists reasonable suspicion that an individual is undocumented. But guess what? That is merely the starting point. The law extends further, prohibiting actions such as providing transportation to an undocumented immigrant, leasing them accommodation, or even employing them for temporary labor. Yes, you understood correctly. Routine, everyday actions, considered ordinary elsewhere, are criminalized here. However, here's an element you might not anticipate. Alabama possesses one of the smallest immigrant populations nationwide. Fewer than 4.5% of its residents are foreign-born. So, why implement such extreme measures? Many observers attribute it to symbolism, an effort to assert a position and communicate a message. Yet for individuals subject to these laws, symbolism translates into a struggle for survival. What transpires when fear becomes ingrained in everyday life? When neighbors cease communication? Alabama is confronting these inquiries directly, and the responses are proving more disconcerting than anticipated. But here's the twist. Despite these stringent laws, Alabama has some of the most restrictive immigration-related education laws in the country. Schools are mandated to gather the immigration status of every enrolling student. While students cannot be denied entry based on this information, yet, advocates argue the clear intention is to dissuade undocumented families from accessing public education altogether. You would be shocked by the data. Following the law's initial implementation, thousands of students reportedly disappeared from classrooms within weeks. Businesses witnessed their labor force diminish overnight. Agricultural yields in rural areas deteriorated due to labor shortages. Now, in 2025, with renewed enforcement, Alabama is intensifying its stance, regardless of the economic fallout. And don't assume these policies operate discreetly. Alabama's state administration has made public declarations highlighting their zero-tolerance strategy. In certain counties, immigration checkpoints have reappeared. Residents report avoiding entire towns. People report living in perpetual fear. Number 4. Arizona. Recall the roadside checkpoints, the sheriff's deputies interrogating passengers, the impassioned protests outside government buildings. This isn't merely a historical recollection. It's the resurgent reality in Arizona, a state once at the epicenter of America's most contentious immigration disputes. And now, in 2025, it's intensifying the situation once more. You would be shocked at the extent of the new laws. Arizona has recently reintroduced legislation empowering law enforcement to stop and question individuals about their immigration status during routine encounters, a measure reminiscent of the highly controversial SB 1070. But guess what? This iteration is even more expansive. Officers can now detain anyone suspected of being unlawfully present, even if no other offense has been committed. Critics are sounding the alarm, warning that this paves the way for racial profiling. Supporters contend it's essential for restoring law and order. Either way, the atmosphere on the streets of cities like Phoenix and Tucson feels altered. In rural regions near the border, many residents describe living in a continuous state of heightened alertness. It doesn't stop there. Arizona has broadened employer audits, increased reliance on E-Verify, and enacted new identification laws demanding state-issued proof of residency for nearly every public service. This includes housing assistance, unemployment benefits, and even certain forms of medical aid. Here's something that might seem counterintuitive. Although the state's undocumented population has been decreasing for years, enforcement is now stricter than ever. This is creating tangible economic repercussions. Construction firms, agricultural operations, and restaurants report critical labor shortages. The state's housing sector, previously thriving, is experiencing setbacks due to a scarcity of skilled labor. The most disturbing aspect? Accounts are surfacing from citizens and legal residents who claim they were interrogated or detained based on their physical appearance or language. It's a chilling echo of the 2010s, and it's recurring. Is Arizona reverting to its previous strategies, or is it adapting them for a new era? Regardless, it's evident that in 2025, immigration enforcement in the Grand Canyon state is no longer solely focused on the border itself. It's increasingly about defining who belongs and who does not. Number 3. Iowa. Rolling farmland, peaceful towns. A state you wouldn't typically associate with leading the charge on immigration crackdowns. Yet in 2025, Iowa is doing precisely that, catching many by surprise. You might assume immigration enforcement is primarily a concern for border states. But guess what? Iowa has demonstrated otherwise. This year, the state approved Senate File 2340, legislation establishing it as a state crime to be present without lawful status. That's correct. Individuals can be arrested, incarcerated, and ordered to leave, all under state authority, without awaiting federal intervention. You would be shocked to learn how swiftly this is being implemented. Since the law came into force, counties throughout Iowa have reported a marked increase in detentions, particularly in areas with substantial agricultural workforces. In communities like Storm Lake and Marshalltown, which depend heavily on immigrant labor, fear is proliferating faster than ever. But there's an additional layer. Under the new statute, anyone convicted of these immigration offenses faces automatic expulsion from the state. They are given mere days, not weeks, to depart or risk rearrest. And local law enforcement? They are now collaborating more closely with ICE than previously, despite ongoing federal lawsuits arguing the law exceeds constitutional boundaries. Here is something many fail to realize. Iowa boasts one of the most rapidly expanding immigrant populations in the Midwest. These communities sustain meatpacking facilities, factories, and farms, some of the state's primary economic engines. Yet now, some businesses are quietly preparing for the repercussions, uncertain how long they can operate without this crucial labor pool. Even citizens are experiencing the ripple effects. Schools are observing abrupt declines in enrollment. Healthcare clinics report fewer patient visits, and faith-based groups have initiated clandestine aid networks for families too frightened to venture outside. Why is a state without an international border adopting such aggressive tactics? Many point to political dynamics. Others suggest it stems from apprehension. But one thing is certain. Iowa is no longer a bystander in the immigration debate. It is actively shaping it. Number 2. Louisiana. Envision gumbo, jazz ensembles, and bayous, not checkpoints and detention facilities. However, in 2025, Louisiana has taken a decisive turn. This year, lawmakers passed legislation granting local police comprehensive authority to detain undocumented immigrants without needing to wait for ICE involvement. You would be shocked at how rapidly this is progressing. In parishes such as Jefferson and Caddo, sheriff's offices are reportedly deploying specialized immigration task forces, utilizing the same databases and technology previously restricted to federal border agencies. Community leaders express concern that this is creating divisions among neighbors, while civil rights organizations argue it promotes profiling. Even local schools and healthcare providers are now obligated to report undocumented individuals seeking public assistance. This means fear accompanies families into hospitals, educational institutions, and potentially even places of worship. For a state renowned for its rich cultural heritage and welcoming spirit, this new phase feels colder, more severe, and is altering the very character of Louisiana. The state government isn't trying to hide these changes either. Officials have publicly stated their intentions, emphasizing a hardline approach. What happens when the systems meant to support communities instead become sources of fear? Louisiana is grappling with this reality, and the outcome remains uncertain. Number 1. North Carolina. Known for its scenic beaches, burgeoning tech centers, and bluegrass traditions. But in 2025, North Carolina is making news for a different reason, aggressively targeting undocumented immigrants within local communities. The speed of these changes is alarming. Just this year, the state revived agreements empowering sheriff's departments to function as immigration enforcers, apprehending and holding individuals until ICE can take custody. You would be stunned by how many counties, particularly in the Piedmont and eastern regions, have opted back into these programs. And it doesn't end there. A new law now prohibits sanctuary policies statewide. Local governments that decline to cooperate with federal immigration detainers risk losing state funding entirely. Critics label this coercion. Officials call it upholding public safety. But guess what? The fear is palpable. Families are reportedly withdrawing children from schools. Workers are missing work, and entire communities, many with long-standing roots, are retreating into the shadows, afraid of drawing attention. North Carolina has fundamentally altered the landscape of immigration enforcement within its borders. From Texas's border battles to Florida's E-Verify mandates, Oklahoma and Iowa criminalizing mere presence, Tennessee and Georgia restricting access to basic services, Alabama's far-reaching HB 56, Arizona's revived enforcement, Louisiana's empowered local police, and North Carolina's anti-sanctuary stance. These 10 states represent the forefront of a significant shift in U.S. immigration policy as we enter 2025. These state-level actions raise profound questions. Is this trend primarily about enhancing security, or is it driven by political agendas? What are the long-term consequences for communities, economies, and the individuals caught within these tightening regulations? When states take federal matters into their own hands, where does it lead? The laws discussed reflect a complex interplay of legal interpretation, political calculation, economic pressures, and deeply human stories. As the nation watches, the impact on families, schools, workplaces, and the very fabric of these communities continues to unfold. The answers remain complex, and the future landscape of immigration in America is being actively reshaped, state by state. Thank you for joining us on our channel for this crucial update.